Apparently, not everyone who gets reincarnated into a book becomes the main character. Some end up as saints who find love after a mountain of hardship. Others become villainesses who claw their way into power. But then there are the extras. People who just live normal lives. And honestly, a stable job, a cozy home, a family that loves you, and friends you can be real with sound pretty great to me. Our girl Carolina is one of those extras. She's dating the male lead himself, Soja, and right now she's hovering over him while he's blushing so hard he can barely speak. She just stares at him, completely smitten, like she could watch his face all day, so she teases him a little. Are they seriously going to hold hands their entire relationship and save the first kiss for the wedding? He insists that's not it. There's just something he hasn't told her yet. She waves it off anyway and says whatever it is can wait. Then she pulls him in, pins him against the chair, and tells him flat out that she wants him. Bad move, because Soja flips the script instantly. He grabs her, spins her around, yanks her up while she yelps in surprise, then kisses her and carries her straight to the bed. He peels off his shirt, telling her to take all of him. In her head, she's thinking that this escalated fast. But honestly, aside from her boyfriend being unfairly good-looking, her whole life is pretty ordinary. And simple and safe is more than enough to make her happy. Later, Soja catches her heading out and jokes that she'd better not be planning to seduce the Emperor and then disappear. She laughs it off on the outside, but inside, her smile goes cold. This is before she found out who he really was. Meanwhile, rewind to the Regencia Imperial Palace inside the Ministry of Finance, where everyone is just trying to get through their workday. Donovan storms up to Carolina, calling her Miss Carolina Diaz when he wants to sound official, and accuses her of pulling some kind of prank on him. He's furious. He slams his fist on the table because the rollout data for the Albron territory is missing from the document she submitted yesterday. He throws the papers right at her face. With the Emperor's victory ceremony less than a week away, every department is about to report before state affairs even begin. He's panicking that she's about to drag the entire finance ministry's name through the mud. Carolina stays calm, though. She picks up the papers and apologizes, telling him that wasn't her intention and that she'll have it compiled before she heads out today. He's not having it. He snaps back, asking who said she gets to head out at all, and demands it be done before lunch instead. She bows and walks away without another word. Back at her desk, a fellow ministry employee named Connie notices something's off and asks if she's okay. When Carolina asks why, Connie drops the bomb. Donovan was the one who told her to leave that data out in the first place. Connie heard it with her own ears. So now the question is obvious. Why is he punishing her for his own mistake? Carolina just laughs the whole thing off. Needing to blow off some steam after work, she tells Connie, who looks ready to feel sorry for her, until Carolina waves it away and tells her to go enjoy herself instead. Connie chimes in with a quick goodbye before clocking out, and Carolina tosses the same energy right back. But here's the truth. She's not actually upset, not even a little. Compared to her past life, this is nothing. Because Carolina used to be an ordinary civil exam student who collapsed from sheer overwork and stress, and somehow woke up as Carolina Diaz, a side character in a novel. Not even a footnote in the original plot. She's still stuck doing low-level finance work just like before, but honestly, she's thrilled about it. No overtime today means a peaceful life, and that's basically the dream. The actual book is some grand romance between a brutal, warmongering emperor and his sunny, wrongfully accused leading lady, the kind of slow burn that ends happily ever after. Carolina wants none of that drama. Her only wish is simple. Survive to retirement, collect her pension, and live quietly. Romance isn't completely off the table. She just hasn't had the chance. And honestly, who could blame her for not chasing it? Later that day, Connie ends up buried under a mountain of overtime courtesy of some guy named Donovan, so she sends Carolina home alone, apologizing the whole way. Carolina tells her she's got this and heads out completely unbothered by her own sudden freedom. Cats at the park, groceries for dinner, the usual plan for an unexpected evening off. Then she spots something rare. Freesias blooming way out of season with butterflies drifting lazily around the golden petals. She can't resist stepping inside. The shop owner tells her these are the very last bunch fresh from the northern capital and starts wrapping them up while Carolina imagines them sitting pretty by her window catching the sunlight. Honestly, I'd have grabbed them too. That's when a hooded stranger steps up to the same counter and asks for freesias as well. Carolina's eyes go wide. Because sometimes life doesn't just get interrupted. It gets completely rewritten, starting with one impossibly striking stranger who pulls his hood down just a little too late. Carolina's still frozen, completely caught off guard by how handsome this stranger is. She can't help but wonder how anyone's eyes could look like that until he tugs his hood down further, and she finally catches herself staring way too hard. Mortified, she looks away like nothing happened. Meanwhile, Soja presses the shopkeeper again about the freesias and gets the bad news. Sold out. The last bunch just went to the woman standing right next to him. He asks if any other merchant nearby might have some, but the shopkeeper isn't hopeful, not with the flowers being out of season. That's when Carolina steps in. She doesn't know his situation, but it's obvious he needs these more than she does, so she offers up her own bouquet without a second thought. It's not like she absolutely needed them anyway. Soja just stares at the flowers for a moment before taking them, thanking her with something that sounds suspiciously close to a confession. Then he drops a pouch of gold on the counter, tells the shopkeeper to use it for whatever flowers Carolina wants, and walks straight out the door like it's nothing. Carolina was left standing there completely stunned. That's way too generous for a stray bouquet, she thinks, but he's already gone. The shopkeeper, meanwhile, is staring at the gold like it just fell from the sky. Carolina ends up walking out with an entire basket of flowers she never asked for, mostly because the shopkeeper looked 1 second from tears if she didn't take them all. As she walks, she can't stop replaying the encounter. Definitely the most handsome man she's ever seen, with a stiff, formal way of speaking that screamed soldiers fresh off the battlefield. Yet he switched to casual speech so easily it almost felt noble. Either way, free eye candy on an otherwise dull day off isn't something she's going to complain about. Her life is just work and home on repeat, so a little excitement like this is rare. Then, heading toward Greydale Park, she freezes. There he is again. Soja stands alone at a locked gate, a teddy bear in hand and freesias tucked against his chest, looking devastated. The timing feels way too perfect to be a coincidence. She realizes the main gate is under construction, and when he turns to head that way, instead she rushes to warn him, only for him to spin around and shoot her a glare that stops her cold. Carolina stumbles, flowers scattering everywhere, and Soja catches her right before she hits the ground. But his grip on her wrist is way tighter than he realizes, and the second he notices her wincing in pain, he lets go immediately. She's left there silently cursing the pain while rubbing her wrist. She pushes through it to remind him they've actually met before, back at the flower shop. He recognizes her instantly as the Frisia woman and asks if she needs something. She just wants to give him a heads up. The main gate he's heading toward is under construction, so if he wants into Graysel Park before it closes, he needs to go the other way, and fast. Soja stares off in the direction she's pointing, clearly thrown, then quietly thanks her. Carolina tries to wave it off and turn to leave, but Soja's eyes catch the bruise forming on her wrist, the one he caused, and guilt stops him cold. He tells her to wait, insists on checking it despite her protests, and when she still hesitates, he basically guilts her into it by joking he doesn't want to look like a villain. Once he examines her hand, he confirms nothing's broken, just swelling that'll bruise for a day or two, and tells her to get it treated at sunrise at a nearby temple, dropping the name Everett Rogers as her reference. Then he walks off, leaving Carolina repeating that oddly specific name in her head, intrigued. That evening, the Frisias and Teddy Bear end up resting at a tombstone, and Soja steps out of the cemetery only to be intercepted by a man waiting with a carriage. "I suspected you were here," the man says, addressing him as Your Majesty, which instantly tells us exactly who Soja really is. The man scolds him hard for sneaking off alone on the anniversary of Lady Bliss's death, especially with the triumphal ceremony coming up and 0 guards around him. Soja brushes off the danger completely unbothered. Then the man asks if anything went wrong while he was out. Soja hesitates, clearly thinking about the wrist incident with Carolina, and for a second admits maybe a little happened. But he immediately backtracks and insists nothing did. Yeah, that's exactly the kind of guilty hesitation that gives it away. Carolina's back at her desk, flexing the wrist Soja gripped a little too hard, and surprisingly, it healed up fine. Just 1 silver's worth of ointment did the job, so she's quietly relieved she skipped the temple altogether. Sure, the goddess Minos' healers could have fixed it instantly with pure divine power. But that convenience comes with a price tag that makes 0 sense for a bruise this small, since the temple charges the same steep donation no matter how minor the injury. So she can't help but side-eye Soja a little for suggesting it is like money grows on trees. Then again, with a face like his, she's willing to forgive the cluelessness. She can't stop the blush creeping up just thinking about him. Meanwhile, back in the office, Donovan is absolutely losing it on Connie in front of everyone. He snaps about missed deadlines while she shrinks under the pressure, apologizing over and over. Carolina just watches quietly, thinking, yep, here we go again, same chaos, different day. By sunset, Connie is completely drained. He keeps ranting about being handed 8 years of tax records across 7 territories with 1 single day to finish them, practically begging the universe to let her drop dead instead. So, overtime hits again, no surprise there. Carolina points out that Donovan's been extra unhinged lately, and Connie explains exactly why. He's terrified about the Emperor's triumphal return, especially since he's been bragging about ties to the Duke of Camelot. And who happens to be the second most powerful man in the Empire? Turns out rumors are spreading that the Emperor plans to purge him, along with every noble who got comfortable while the war was happening. Connie practically lights up, imagining the drama unfolding, joking she'll grab popcorn for the show. But Carolina isn't laughing. She knows exactly what this Emperor is capable of. The same man who slaughtered his way to the throne and stained nations in blood for 8 straight years before some female lead supposedly softened him up. So while everyone else braces for political fireworks, Carolina's only real fear is much simpler. Will her quiet, peaceful little life survive whatever comes next? Connie finally finishes her part, admitting she nearly cried over it, but Carolina cuts in, offering to help since she's almost done with her own pile. Connie just lights up, calling Carolina the best thing that ever happened to her. He keeps going on about how she never had parents pulling strings for her career but somehow won the friendship lottery by meeting Carolina back at the academy. Carolina eventually cuts the sentimental moment short, telling her to just hurry up and hand the work over already. Connie does, but the second Carolina glances at the papers, something feels off. This is Western Territory data, not Eastern, and Connie is supposed to be handling East. Turns out Donovan just dumped this on her too, no explanation given. The real culprit behind the West data is some noble named Andrew Nofi. Apparently, Donovan loves quietly offloading his responsibilities onto Connie under the excuse of doing him a favor. Not exactly a first for him either. Carolina skims through it, and while the sudden change in who's handling what is suspicious, the actual numbers look clean enough, so she lets it go for now. Anyway, the weekend finally arrives, and Carolina is living her absolute best life, decked out, glowing, practically floating down the street, screaming about her long-awaited golden weekend. She heads straight to see her 5 favorite cats, Do, Ri, Mi, Fa, and Sol, feeding them while soaking in the kind of peace she hasn't felt in forever thanks to non-stop weekend work. Honestly, she deserved this. But just when things are calm, Fa suddenly bolts into a bush, and Carolina chases after him only to freeze at what she finds. It's Soja, hood up, with Fa's claws dug straight into his sleeve. Mortified, she scrambles to apologize, rambling about the cat being astray and offering to pay for any damage to his clothes. Soja says, absolutely nothing. He just walks right past her like she wasn't even talking, leaving Carolina standing there completely stunned, convinced he ignored her on purpose. And honestly, who wouldn't be a little offended by that? Carolina is still completely stunned, watching Soja walk off without a single word, fully convinced he ignored her on purpose. Even after leaving the cats behind, she can't shake it off. She keeps replaying the moment over and over, thinking about how ridiculous it was for someone to just blatantly act like she didn't exist. Sure, they're not exactly close enough for warm greetings. But that reaction felt extreme, almost like he thought she was some kind of stalker. She imagines him waving her off like a stray cat and decides, with looks like his, he probably attracts more pests than he'd like to admit. Eventually, she just shrugs it off, telling herself caring is a losing game, and she'll likely never run into him again anyway. Of course, the universe disagrees immediately, because she spots him again just a short distance away and instinctively yelps, diving behind a tree like a startled cat herself. Yeah, I would have done the same thing. She's mortified, realizing he actually has company this time. She quickly convinces herself that hiding is the weirder move here, since she hasn't done anything wrong, so she forces herself to walk past confidently instead. Unfortunately for her, Soja notices the whole dramatic exit, and now he's the one growing curious about who she actually is. She stops briefly at a bakery, completely unaware that Soja has been quietly trailing behind her this entire time, only slipping away once she's safely done with her errand. Meanwhile, Soja shows up at some upscale establishment, hood finally off, revealing himself to a waiter named Kyle, who greets him with familiar comfort. Turns out Kyle already knows exactly who he's serving, casually confirming he's technically on official duty while pouring tea. Soja brushes off questions about the Duke of Camelot situation, clearly distracted by something else entirely. Instead, he asks Kyle a strange question. Does he believe in coincidences? Kyle is immediately intrigued, leaning into the conversation as Soja finally lays out exactly what's been bothering him, running into the same woman every single time he leaves the Imperial Palace. Not just once, but repeatedly, sometimes multiple times in one day. He genuinely wants to know if something like that could just be a coincidence. And honestly, given how suspicious it sounds, even to him, you can tell he's already starting to doubt it himself. Kyle immediately jumps to the obvious conclusion, asking if Soja suspects this woman of being an assassin or spy, but Soja isn't so sure anymore. Thinking back to the moment he grabbed her wrist, there was zero hesitation in how she reacted. No instinct for danger, no trained wariness, just hands that clearly never touched a weapon in their life. If anything, she reminded him more of a pampered puppy than of anyone dangerous. Still, something about the whole situation nags at him enough that he wants answers. Whether this is fate working behind the scenes or just some person pulling strings, he doesn't understand yet. Kyle agrees to look into it without hesitation, only to get pulled away seconds later by a group of women demanding a menu refill. Left alone with his terrible coffee, Soja stares into his cup completely unimpressed by the place's popularity, given how bad the drink actually is. He can't even bring himself to finish it. His mind keeps circling back to one single thought. Who exactly is that woman? Meanwhile, back at the Ministry of Finance, Carolina is buried under an avalanche of paperwork. Connie is straight up losing her mind beside her, convinced the workload is actually going to kill her this time. Carolina silently relates a little too hard, quietly panicking that she might genuinely overwork herself to death again in this life too. But something feels off today. Donovan, usually the loudest, most explosive presence in the office, is dead silent, nervously chewing his nails like a man waiting for the worst. Yeah, that's never a good sign. Before anyone can question it further, the doors burst open as armed men march straight into the office, demanding everyone freeze and step back against the wall. Their reason becomes clear immediately. They're here to arrest whoever helped the Duke of Camelot pull off bribery and slush funds. Every head in the room turns toward Donovan. And honestly, Carolina doesn't even need confirmation at this point. The sweat alone says everything. The whole room freezes the second this man bursts in, commanding everyone to stop what they're doing and back against the wall. He's got serious authority in his voice. He immediately unrolls a scroll announcing he's there to arrest whoever's responsible for bribery and running secret slush funds tied to Camelot. The workers start murmuring frantically among themselves, clearly panicking the moment they hear the inspection team. Since that means this is serious, someone quietly questions why Donovan isn't saying anything, and that's when he visibly stiffens, eyes going wide. The inspector walks straight up to him, confirming he's the head of the Treasury Department before laying out the full case. According to their internal investigation, ever since Donovan took over, financial officers across the Western region, including Camelot Duchy, have been fabricating documents to build out these slush funds. There's evidence he personally pocketed bribes funneled through manipulated tax revenue. Donovan looks completely blindsided, insisting there has to be some mistake. The inspector isn't buying it and announces he's taking Donovan, the supervisor, and the Western regional officer who drafted the reports into custody. That's when David steps forward, protesting that this is absurd. Carolina is just standing there silently watching this unfold. Her stomach drops, realizing that's the exact strategic materials report she ghost wrote in Connie's place. The inspector asks David directly if he's the one who wrote these documents, but David denies it, claiming he's just the assigned officer, not the actual author. Then, in a move that lands like a punch, he points straight at Connie. Connie immediately panics, demanding to know if what David's saying is true. The inspector turns to her for an answer. She stammers, admitting she can't say for certain just by looking at it. But it does look like her work, trailing off before she can finish. That hesitation is all it takes. The inspector signals his team, and suddenly people are getting handcuffed left and right, Connie included. You can practically feel Carolina's blood boil watching her friend get cuffed for something she didn't even do. Carolina is shaken, watching her coworkers get dragged away as people start crowding around her. She asks what's happening and whether Connie actually committed embezzlement. Carolina forces herself to stay composed, knowing that losing her cool right now would do nothing but get someone else locked up too. Her mind starts piecing it together fast. David being assigned to the Western Territory documents was never random. This was deliberate, calculated, Donovan's filthy scheme to pin the entire mess on someone else. So Carolina isn't about to just stand there and let it happen. She turns and walks straight to her desk, pulling open a drawer where everything she needs is waiting. All the original data still exists, and numbers don't lie. Time to fight back with proof. Carolina's fury is written all over her face. In her mind, there's only one promise. Whoever hurt Connie is going to pay. Dearly. The city settles into night, glowing under a wash of building lights. We find ourselves in a small cafe where Kyle hums quietly while washing dishes. He's careful with each cup, lining them up neatly, but something's bothering him. Every single customer keeps leaving their coffee unfinished. Despite using premium beans and top-tier machines, the cups keep coming back full. He can't figure out why regulars keep growing in number, yet nobody actually drinks the coffee. Before he can think on it further, the bell above the door rings. Kyle steps out of the kitchen, expecting a late customer to turn away. He informs them that they are closing soon, ready to redirect them elsewhere, but he freezes mid-sentence. Standing there is Carolina, clutching a file, visibly nervous. Rewind a few minutes. Carolina is outside the cafe, still working up the nerve to go in. She admits to herself that she was going to come there eventually, staring up at the warm light spilling from the windows. She'd promised herself, more times than she can count, to stay out of the original story's events. Yet here she is anyway. Because this cafe isn't just a cafe. It's the hidden base of the Emperor's Intelligence Guild. Kyle is the man running it, and he is the Emperor's most trusted confidant. Going through normal channels means risking her information about Connie getting buried or ignored. The only way to actually protect Connie is to hand this report straight to the Emperor, so she steadies her breathing and walks in, back to the present. Before Kyle even speaks, Carolina takes a second to admire the place, genuinely surprised by how authentic it looks. Well, it is a real cafe. She reminds herself since it's actually in business. Then Kyle greets her properly, and that's when it hits her. The chestnut hair, the calm crescent moon eyes, the cool green stare. This is Kyle Selmore straight out of the novel, and the description was right. He really does carry that tragic second lead energy. Honestly, who wouldn't recognize him immediately? Flustered, she mutters something about wanting coffee, but Kyle isn't buying it. He steps closer and asks if she's really here for a drink, locking eyes with her as he says it looks like she came for something else entirely. Kyle repeats himself, watching Carolina's nerves spike. He's certain she's hiding something. He assumes that she has another motive. For a second, Carolina panics internally. Don't tell me he's already caught on. The master of the Imperial Information Guild really does live up to his reputation. But before she can spiral further, Kyle throws out examples instead. He asks if she's here to sell something or pitch an investment, and when she insists no, she genuinely just wants coffee. His whole demeanor flips. He gasps and covers his mouth. Bro is practically glowing with joy. He immediately ushers her to a table like she's the most important guest he's had in months. Carolina has no idea what just happened. Kyle apologizes for the misunderstanding, explaining they barely get customers who just want coffee this late, then winks and dashes off to grab a menu. She's relieved her real reason for coming wasn't exposed, but also thoroughly confused. This isn't the calm, composed strategist the novel described at all. Guess the source material doesn't always match reality, she admits to herself, watching him hum cheerfully behind the counter. Kyle returns with her coffee, pouring it with way more enthusiasm than necessary. He winks again as he sets it down. Carolina smiles politely despite the growing weirdness, thanks him, and takes a sip. Big mistake. The second it hits her tongue, she nearly drops the cup. It's awful, like actual poison, and her mind starts spiraling through worst-case scenarios. Is this some kind of test? She forces herself to hold it together while Kyle studies her in silence, then sighs and offers to just give the cup to someone else since it's clearly not to her taste. That single sentence flips a switch in Carolina's head. Another customer means failure, which means this has to be some kind of loyalty test from the guild. So she grabs the cup before he can take it, insisting she's drinking the rest, and forces on a smile that's clearly costing her everything. For Connie's sake, she tells herself, bracing as sweat beads down her face. Then, in one terrifying motion, she tips the cup back and drinks the entire thing in one go, leaving Kyle completely stunned. Carolina sets the cup down and wipes her mouth with a towel, doing everything she can to keep her face neutral while her whole body screams at her not to. Kyle stares at her in disbelief. You actually drank it all, and honestly, even he didn't think she'd manage it. He tells her she's the first person in an entire year to finish the coffee, and his eyes start welling up like she just accomplished something legendary. Carolina has no idea what's happening anymore. The test should be over, so why is he getting emotional instead of talking guild business? Maybe the password really is the final step. Then Kyle announces he needs to bring out the complimentary item and turns to walk off, leaving Carolina scrambling. So she says it. The phrase, "The blue hawk soaring in the sky guided me here." And just like that, Kyle freezes mid-step. The silence that follows is heavy enough that Carolina actually starts hoping she didn't mess it up. Turns out she didn't. Kyle's entire demeanor shifts the moment he hears it. He drops into the seat across from her, all business now, asking flat out if she's buying or selling. Carolina slides the folder over. Inside is detailed evidence against Duke Camelot and his associated families, clearly compiled with serious effort. Kyle looks impressed, but he's not offering top dollar. His reasoning actually makes sense. Since the documents were pulled from official treasury records, an ongoing inspection would eventually surface this anyway. So, scarcity-wise, it's not worth as much as Carolina hoped. But Carolina isn't backing down. She counters that timing matters just as much as scarcity, maybe more. Since acting fast on the right info at the right moment is its own kind of value. If you truly believe that, you're missing the bigger picture. And yeah, that line actually catches Kyle off guard. He admits she's got real negotiation skills, and Carolina practically lights up internally, wondering if she just outmaneuvered the legendary Kyle himself. Before sealing anything, though, Kyle wants to know why she thinks now is the moment. Carolina explains her theory that the Emperor plans to purge Duke Camelot entirely, and she would need a surprise raid plus solid evidence to justify it before anything gets destroyed. Reasonable enough. But then Kyle's expression shifts completely, and he asks where she actually got this information. Specifically, was it Count Rankles? Carolina freezes. She never gave her name, so how does he already know it, let alone connect her to Rankles at all? Kyle presses further, pointing out that only Rankles could have handed her the location, the password, and the truth about who really runs this guild. The silence that follows says everything. Carolina's cover, whatever was left of it, is starting to crack. Kyle doesn't let it go. He wants to know exactly how she pieced together that the guild belongs to the Emperor himself. Carolina goes quiet for a beat, her mind racing. Is he onto something? Or is this just him testing how much she actually knows? Obviously, she knows because of the original story, but there's no way she's saying that out loud. So instead, she leans on logic. She points out that whoever passed her the contact phrase mentioned a blue falcon soaring through the sky, and that symbol isn't exactly a secret. It was the Emperor's personal crest, back when he was still a Grand Duke. Then she walks Kyle through the whole history. The Rehensia Empire, founded on the legend of descendants of gods. The imperial family traditionally entitled to use the goddess's crest, but the previous emperor, who seized the throne through underhanded means, stripped that right from his nephew out of spite, forcing him to adopt the blue falcon instead as a deliberate insult, and branding him as nothing more than a side branch of the family. Of course, after that, the same nephew reclaimed the throne through a brutal purge. The symbol flipped its meaning entirely, and became a mark of power instead of shame. Kyle isn't fully sold, though. He pushes back, arguing that it's a fairly obscure piece of history, not exactly common knowledge that people just casually connect dots from. As expected, Carolina thinks to herself, already braced for this, so she doubles down. Nobody else uses the blue falcon. The fact that everyone tiptoes around even mentioning it is proof enough of what it represents. There's no Blue Falcon bookstore, no Blue Falcon pub, anywhere on the continent. Even a horse born under that symbol last year got renamed entirely to avoid the association. She tells him that more people care about it than he thinks, fully committed to her bluff, and that's when Kyle cracks. He bursts out laughing, completely catching Carolina off guard. Apparently, her reasoning landed harder than she expected. This is because Kyle basically admits she just confirmed something he assumed was only a guess on her part. He's amused to observe that it's not just her walking on eggshells around him, it's everyone. Carolina simply nods along, still not entirely sure why he finds this so funny. But none of that matters right now. Kyle straightens up, finally ready to talk business. Now it's time to hear your conditions, Miss Carolina. And just like that, she's won the opening round. Finally, she thinks, barely containing herself. This is the part she's been waiting for. Carolina doesn't waste time getting to the point. Her friend Connie, a Ministry of Finance employee, got swept up in this whole mess and arrested, and she wants her saved. Kyle immediately shuts that down, though, telling her plea bargains aren't something he handles. But but Carolina isn't done. She insists Connie isn't even guilty. This gets Kyle's attention again, pulling his eyes back up from the documents. She's shaking slightly now, trying to keep her composure even though the unfairness of it all is eating at her. The other two people involved, Donovan and Andrew, got released after questioning and are basically living comfortably under so-called house arrest, while Connie sits alone in a detention center, still being interrogated, not even allowed to receive a blanket or change of clothes. Carolina lays it all out. She's not asking for a plea deal because Connie doesn't need one. She's innocent. All Carolina wants is for her friend to come home safely, or at the very least to be pointed towards someone who can actually help prove that innocence. Kyle goes quiet, clearly turning something over in his head. You really believe in your friend? Carolina doesn't hesitate, confirming that Connie has been her best friend since their academy days. That single detail makes Kyle's eyes widen. He thanks her for answering, then mentions something about his job, making him a bit paranoid by nature. He also apologizes for the trouble, and then, just like that, agrees to the deal. Carolina's a little stunned at how fast it happened. Kyle stands, taking the folder with him, and tells her to come back at the same time next week. In the meantime, he promises to personally guarantee Connie's safety. Carolina's relief is instant, her cheeks flushing with pure joy. But then Kyle pauses, turns back with the brightest smile imaginable, and casually offers her a coffee refill. Carolina is out of her seat immediately, politely declining and practically sprinting for the door. She's already halfway gone when she says she should get going. As she rushes off, she can't stop thinking about that coffee. That was easily the scariest moment of the whole conversation, somehow worse than negotiating with the actual head of the Intelligence Guild. There's no way she's drinking that again. Kyle watches her go from the window, quietly amused, until the door opens again, and someone new steps in. He turns, and there's Soja, dressed sharp in black, holding a book. Your Majesty, Kyle greets him properly. Soja doesn't waste time with pleasantries either, asking Kyle straight up if he really thinks today was just a coincidence. Soja and Kyle are standing by the window again, both clearly turning the same thought over in their heads. Is this just another unfortunate coincidence? Kyle isn't sure either. Admitting it's strange how this woman walked straight into their hands carrying exactly the information they need most right now. Soja sits down, pulls out her file, and starts laying out the facts. Her mother is of the nobility, the second daughter of Count Rankios. Her father was a commoner turned tenured professor whose title barely extended past his own name, leaving the family treated as essentially commoners despite the technical rank. She's worked steadily at the palace since graduating with no odd gaps in her record. So Soja asks the obvious question. Could Carolina Diaz actually be working for the Duke of Camelot? Kyle shuts that down almost instantly, explaining that Count Rankios and the Duke are famously at odds. As his niece, she'd have no reason to risk everything by allying with him, especially with no heir currently in line and her own inheritance practically guaranteed. Soja actually agrees that the theory falls apart under scrutiny, even recalling that her past kindness toward him couldn't have been calculated since there's no way she could have known those flowers meant anything personal to him. Still, he can't fully write it off as coincidence either, so he makes a decision. He's attending next week's meeting himself, determined to see her and question her face to face. A week later, Carolina overhears coworkers practically celebrating Donovan's absence, joking about finally breathing easier without him breathing down their necks. Though one jab about feeling sorry for whoever's friends with a criminal lands a little too close to home, especially the insinuation that Connie might have taken dirty money alongside Donovan and Andrew. Yeah, that one definitely stung. Carolina brushes it off, reminding herself Connie will be back soon. She steadies her resolve, heading into her meeting with the Information Guild, determined to walk away with real guarantees. That evening, she finally steps into the cafe she's been eyeing, only to find Kyle right there taking orders like it's any other normal day, completely unaware of the storm quietly closing in around her. Carolina shows up early, and Kyle greets her almost immediately, slightly surprised she beat the clock. The cafe is oddly busy for a place with coffee this mediocre. She notes to herself, before Kyle leads her past the seated customers toward a hidden back room and down a set of stairs she absolutely was not expecting. It feels suspicious enough that she half jokes to herself about hoping she isn't walking straight into a kidnapping. But she reminds herself it's an information guild, so secrecy probably comes with the territory. When she finally pushes open the door at the bottom, the light catches her off guard for a second. Once her eyes adjust, she sees a hooded figure already seated and waiting. Something about that posture feels uncomfortably familiar. Then he pulls the hood back. Of course it's Soja. At this point, Carolina doesn't even have the energy to be shocked anymore, quietly realizing this explains exactly why she kept running into him everywhere. Soja seems almost amused that she isn't questioning why he's there, claiming he assumed she already knew his identity and had been following him on purpose this whole time. Carolina is internally screaming at the audacity, mentally pointing out that he was the one constantly showing up wherever she happened to be, not the other way around. The confidence in this man is unreal. Before she can fully process her own irritation, he stands, steps closer, and asks if she's feeling all right, gently tilting her chin up, which instantly sends heat rushing to her face. She panics internally, scolding herself to get a grip, and reminding herself this is probably just some calculated negotiation tactic meant to throw her off balance. Just as the tension peaks, Kyle swings the door open, announcing the cafe is fully closed and clear of customers, giving them total privacy. Soja calmly returns to his seat, crosses his legs, and gets straight to business like nothing happened at all. Soja gets straight to business. Both he and Kyle are now locked in on Carolina. Even though she's nervous, she manages to keep her composure. He notices, though. He is quietly amused that she couldn't hide her reaction earlier when he accused her of following him. She looked like she wanted to curse him out internally before snapping back into professional mode. The second business came up. He shoots Kyle a look, silently confirming this might genuinely be someone with nothing to hide. Drinks come up next. Soja pushes fruit wine on her despite her clearly stating she can't handle alcohol. Then he dares to recommend coffee right after, which she shuts down immediately, given exactly how bad that coffee already is. She wasn't falling for that twice. Kyle eventually returns with the drinks, and they finally get into it. Soja opens with the update Carolina actually cares about. Connie is safe and being treated fairly during the investigation, but she won't be released immediately. Carolina practically freezes mid-sip at that. She reminds him that the deal was that her evidence would secure Connie's release. Soja explains that her evidence alone isn't enough to fully take down the Duke of Camelot. They still need to verify authenticity and gather more proof, though the inspection team is working around the clock, and results should come soon. Carolina isn't thrilled. She mentally throws some sarcasm at how hard that inspection team is supposedly working, but she pushes for a real promise that Connie will be released once everything checks out. Soja reassures her that the documents have already been confirmed genuine. This caution is necessary since their honor is on the line too. That's when the fruit wine finally hits. Carolina, completely unfiltered for a second, blurts out that he clearly has zero trust in people. The comment catches her off guard. She immediately backtracks, apologizing for being rude and blaming the alcohol. Soja just smiles. He tells her that honesty like that is refreshing, so there is no need to apologize. Then he leans in, voice lowering just slightly, and asks if there's anything at all she's been hiding from him. The room falls silent as the two just stare at each other until Carolina finally cracks first. She stammers out a confession that, even before walking in, she'd already before the sentence can land properly grabbed his cloak and yanked him closer. The move leaves Soja completely stunned, his cheeks flushing despite himself. Then, just as suddenly, she collapses. He catches her right before she hits the ground. Panic immediately replaces whatever moment they were having. He shouts for Kyle to call a doctor, and the next thing we see is Carolina out cold in bed while the doctor calmly explains the cause. Apparently, she had a rare hyperabsorption reaction to elderberries. It is completely harmless, just enough to knock her out with drowsiness. Soja lets out a relieved sigh. However, the relief comes with a heavy dose of guilt, since they'd deliberately spiked her drink to loosen her up and pull information out of her. They never expected an actual collapse. Kyle looks just as sheepish, admitting elderberries are usually harmless, and the two step out to grab emergency medicine, conveniently leaving Soja alone with her. Sitting beside her, Soja quietly stews over his own mistake. He is already planning to apologize properly once she wakes, relieved at least that she didn't seem to be hiding anything after all. Then he replays her words from earlier and can't help but smile, realizing it sounded suspiciously like a confession. Right then, Carolina jolts awake. She immediately spirals into accusations that he tried to poison her, dramatically wondering aloud if she's about to die a second death. Soja stays patient through it, eventually explaining the truth. The drink was meant to make her more honest, not harm her, and once he realized she had nothing to hide, he felt awful about the whole scheme. He bows, apologizing sincerely. Carolina, still irritated, decides to let it slide given how valuable the information exchange clearly is. However, she makes it clear he now owes her real accountability when it comes to Connie's case. He agrees without hesitation. She tries to leave to go home and rest, only for him to stand right alongside her. He insists on walking her home since he refuses to let her wander off alone at night after everything that happened. Carolina hesitates, flustered, before quietly admitting she's actually fine with that. Carolina and Soja walk in silence for a while. Neither one is quite able to look at the other. Finally, Carolina breaks the silence. She admits how strange it feels to actually be walking beside him after everything that has happened. He asks if she usually takes this route. He is clearly uneasy about how dark and unsafe it looks for a woman alone. She brushes it off. She explains she has lived here for years and has gotten used to it. This is despite the cemetery sitting right next to the neighborhood. Honestly, that is exactly why the rent stays so cheap. He mentions a knight title she had used earlier, Everett. He asks if it is tied to what happened back when they first met. She explains her reasoning. She figured anyone with information unit ties and knight rank must have fought through the war. They would carry experiences heavy enough to haunt someone's sleep. Yet, thanks to him, she has somehow been sleeping peacefully every night since. She bows lightly, thanking him. The comment clearly catches him off guard. It leaves him uncharacteristically flustered as he turns away. He mumbles that she is surprisingly generous with compliments. They eventually reach an alley. She insists he doesn't need to walk her all the way home. She reasons that a lady shouldn't let a near stranger know exactly where she lives. However, she privately admits he could probably figure it out anyway if he wanted to. Before parting, Soja asks her to call him Sir Everett if they meet again. She agrees. She is mildly amused at how particular he is about titles for someone who clearly doesn't need to be. With that settled, she heads inside. She hopes only that Connie makes it back safely soon. The next morning, work resumes as normal. Then, a coworker pulls Carolina aside. She says a knight from the audit team is waiting outside, asking for her specifically. Carolina is confused and a little anxious. She steps out to meet him. He confirms he is there with a message regarding Connie's safety at the Imperial Detention Center. Carolina's eyes go wide immediately. She is hopeful she might finally get to see her. The knight confirms it is possible. However, he warns her to keep it quiet. Officially, she is only being summoned for questioning as a witness and nothing more. The knight tells her quietly to pack her things and come with him right away. Carolina can barely hide her excitement. She is surprised they are moving faster than promised. She had braced herself for a longer wait. She rushes to grab her belongings. She mutters that they actually kept their word about taking responsibility. Of course, the office gossip catches on instantly. Coworkers swarm her, asking if she is getting dragged into the whole Connie mess too. They throw out theories about reduced sentences or worse. They even cruelly suggest Connie might be facing life in prison. Carolina stays completely unbothered. She is internally rolling her eyes at how pathetic it is. The same people whispering behind her back are now bold enough to say it to her face. She brushes most of it off until someone mentions Count Wrangel being tied to the case. They claim his side is moving to take the family down. That name actually makes her pause. It is amusing rather than alarming, since Count Wrangel happens to be her aunt. She can't resist a little smirk. She imagines how entertained her aunt would be hearing all this secondhand gossip. She calmly tells the workers she'll be sure to pass along the message. Then, she shuts the door on their stunned faces. Yeah, that exit was well earned. Internally, though, she is already plotting payback for how they treated Connie. She promises herself they will regret it the moment Connie walks free. As they head toward the detention center, Carolina admits to herself that her relationship with her so-called powerful aunt isn't nearly as warm as people assume. Once they arrive, the knight leads her toward the innermost cell. The cold, damp air hits her immediately. It shocks her that prisoners aren't even given something as basic as a blanket. She just hopes Connie hasn't been mistreated. Then she hears it. Her name is called out in a familiar voice. Carolina's heart leaps. She calls right back, finally standing face to face with her friend through the bars. And the context of the buyback is, Carolina spots Connie through the bars. She immediately recognizes the voice and rushes closer. However, she is completely thrown off by what she sees. This isn't a prison cell. It's basically a glow-up. Connie just laughs. She explains the decorations showed up almost the moment she arrived. She's been treating the whole thing like an unexpected little vacation, snacks and all. Once the audit night lets Carolina inside, Connie's relief shifts straight into curiosity. She immediately suspects Carolina somehow got swept into the case too. Carolina quickly reassures her that that's not the case. She explains she managed to connect with someone close to the Emperor who arranged this visit. However, she conveniently skips the messy details. She promises to explain everything properly once Connie is actually free. Connie mentions hearing that her charges were already cleared. She worries someone took the fall for her. She is practically buzzing with curiosity over what really happened behind the scenes. Carolina just brushes it off. She knows exactly who's responsible for shaking things up enough to get real results. Sure enough, a week later, the Empire is buzzing with news. The Duke of Camelot has fallen completely. His entire faction was arrested for embezzlement and bribery after overwhelming evidence surfaced from his own territory. Word spreads that the Emperor personally led the raid himself. The move reignited his reputation as someone who shows zero mercy when it comes to corruption. Meanwhile, back at the office, Connie finally returns safe and sound. She is greeted with flowers and a small crowd of coworkers celebrating her release. These are the same coworkers who were whispering about her behind her back not too long ago. One worker mentions Donovan being arrested too. He brands him the real culprit who tried pinning everything on someone else. Another insists he deserves to rot for it and turns to Carolina for agreement. She keeps it diplomatic. She simply trusts the Emperor to handle it properly, though privately she's not exactly convinced bad karma disappears that easily. Once the celebration winds down, everyone heads back to their desks. Connie pulls Carolina aside because she wants to show her something. Carolina is stunned to see an entire pouch overflowing with gold coins. This is the compensation Connie received for everything she went through. Connie jokes that money really is the best medicine. Still, she admits it's nothing compared to the actual slush funds confiscated from the Duke. The conversation shifts to the Duke himself. He has been stripped completely of his title, lands, and wealth. Rumors are swirling that the Emperor originally wanted him executed on the spot. He only held back after the previous Emperor personally pleaded for him to spare the family's legacy. The Duke survives, technically. He keeps his head, but his name? That's done. It is wiped from relevance and shoved into the dusty footnotes of history. And honestly, our girl Carolina could not care less. She's just a working girl trying to get through the week. As far as she's concerned, whoever signs her paycheck is the one who matters. Long live the Emperor, basically. Connie, on the other hand, can't quite let it go. Sure, the Duke was a criminal, but he was still a Duke. The fact that the Emperor took him down without breaking a sweat sends a chill down her spine. She quietly promises herself never to get tangled up with that man again. Then, she immediately changes the subject. Oh, by the way, the Emperor's birthday festival is coming up. It is a big one, too. It's the first since his return, and rumor has it they're throwing everything at it. This includes 300 mages just for the fireworks display. 300. Carolina can barely process the number. Connie is already planning their hangout, though. They will watch fireworks on the third night and grab snacks at the market. That's the whole deal. Carolina's in. Back to work they go. Then the festival actually arrives, and the city comes alive. Kids are laughing, and the streets are packed. The temple prays blessings over the empire in the goddess Minos' name. Sounds magical, right? Except, Carolina and Connie are living proof that festivals don't run themselves. 3 days in, and they look like they've aged a decade. Carolina's drowning is especially hard. Andrew and Donovan got themselves detained, which means their entire workload landed on her desk. Connie is furious on her behalf and offers to stay and help. Carolina waves her off, though. She got burned covering for Donovan once already and isn't doing that again. She insists she's fine. She tells Connie to head home and promises she'll be done soon. Of course, soon turns into late night. Carolina is still buried in paperwork and completely loses track of time. She finally steps outside for air with her scarf wrapped tight against the cold. She notices the Imperial Palace still glowing in the distance. Right, the masquerade ball. Not her problem, she figures. She is already mentally planning tomorrow's dinner with Connie instead, and that's exactly when a man drops out of nowhere. He leaps off a rooftop and lands silently behind her. Carolina's brain goes straight to assassin. She is about to scream when he clamps a hand over her mouth and stops her cold. He tells her to take it easy. He pulls back just enough to reveal his face. It's Soja, Sir Rogers, of all people. Before she can even ask what he's doing sneaking around in a mask, he's already begging her for a favor. Someone's chasing him. Voices are closing in from the bushes, and he needs somewhere to hide, right now. Cut to the masquerade ball, which is already in full swing. Masks are everywhere, and drinks are flowing. Nobles are dressed to the nines and dancing like the world isn't about to set itself on fire. Then a lady accidentally spills her drink right on a man's hand. It is a classic move. She gushes an apology to his lordship, offering to make it up to him. She is already offering to replace his clothes. He waves her off politely enough, but here's the thing. That man is Soja. Behind that calm mask, he is absolutely seething. See, the masquerade ball is the one night a year where titles and bloodlines don't exist. Everyone is equal under the mask. Nobody is allowed to ask who's who. Furthermore, pulling rank by guessing someone's identity is basically social suicide. It sounds nice in theory. It seems great for honest conversations with the emperor and all that. In practice, though, it just means an endless parade of noblewomen for Soja. They use the rule as a cover to corner him. They come one after another, smiling and spilling drinks while angling for his attention. He can't even use his rank to shut it down without breaking etiquette. Bro is trapped. He even tries the polite escape route. He asks permission to visit his family for the festival instead. However, he can't bring himself to actually leave once another lady gets that look in her eye. That's when he snaps internally. He mutters that he can't take this anymore and just bolts. He climbs out a window like a man fleeing a crime scene. Honestly, that is fair considering how suspicious it probably looked. That's how he ends up cornering Carolina. She is, understandably, processing all of this. She asks if he actually attended the ball, meaning he is definitely a noble. He stays quiet on that one. She presses him on why he even bothered going if he hates it this much. All he gives her is a brief answer. He says he had his reasons, conveniently leaving out that it is literally his birthday. Then he asks for one more favor. He needs an escort out of the palace grounds. He has an entry pass, but he apparently has zero dignity left. Carolina's calculating little office worker brain briefly debates charging him for this. She ends up agreeing, though. It is partly out of gratitude for his helping Connie earlier. They make it to the gate together. Carolina flashes her own pass like she does this every night. The guard accepts hers without issue. Soja, though? He has no pass on him, and the guard isn't budging. The guard flatly informs her that without a pass, there is no passage through the gate. He gestures toward the main entrance instead. Carolina isn't having it, though. She turns on the charm immediately. She spins a story about overnight work. She explains how the main gate means missing the night market entirely. All the good food will be gone by the time they trek around. The guard's face stays stone cold. Still, Carolina doubles down. She even forces out a single tear about going home hungry after such a long day, and somehow, it works. The guard caves. He grants a one-time exception and waves them through with a stern reminder not to push it again. Soja is genuinely stunned as they walk away. He didn't expect that to work so smoothly. Carolina just shrugs it off. She explains that years at the Imperial Palace taught her exactly how persuasion works. It is especially effective when you lean into looking sympathetic. Empathy first, she tells him. That is the real trick. Soja is intrigued now. He starts asking more about her. Specifically, he wonders whether she was really stuck working this late because of actual Ministry of Finance duties. She confirms it. She rattles off how brutal the festival season gets with budget reports piling up nonstop. Here's where it gets interesting, though. Soja, deep down, still carries some resentment toward the Emperor. He quietly tests the waters by asking if she feels the same. Carolina doesn't hesitate. She tells him she feels nothing but gratitude. This entire festival exists because of the Emperor's birth and his protection of the country. Peace itself is something worth thanking him for. Soja's eyes practically widen at that response. The conversation shifts. Soja somewhat impulsively invites her to the festival tomorrow. He frames it as guilt for her working through the celebrations. Carolina freezes for a second. She is genuinely confused why he would feel sorry about something that is just part of her normal routine. She almost declines. She mentions prior plans with a friend. However, she sees his reaction immediately. There is a brief flicker of disappointment on his face, and her heart does something embarrassing. Without even fully processing it, she backtracks. She claims those plans got canceled. They agree to meet at Kyle's cafe around 6 the next evening. Somewhere in the back of her mind, Carolina already feels a little guilty toward Connie for bailing on their original plan. Connie nearly loses it the second she hears the news. Is someone escorting Carolina to the festival? Since when? Who is it? Is there a secret romance she's been hiding this whole time? The questions come flying so fast that Carolina barely gets a word in. She finally manages to calm her down. She clarifies it's not a romance, just an escort. Then she reminds her it's the Emperor's aide. He is the same guy who helped during the whole Donovan mess. Connie lights up immediately. She practically pushes her out the door, insisting she actually enjoy a proper date for once. Carolina, predictably, shuts that down too. She insists it's not a date. Connie isn't buying it though. Honestly, when you lay it out, a man and woman wandering a festival together is a clear sign. Sharing food and watching fireworks side by side is a date by any definition. Carolina can't even argue back. Meanwhile, over at the cafe, Soja walks in looking unusually on edge. He catches Kyle's attention immediately. Turns out he's got plans with Carolina today. This sends Kyle into an entirely different kind of panic. He instantly assumes the worst, or best, depending on how you look at it. He starts pressing Soja about whether this is a date. Soja insists it's nothing like that. He claims it is just a small apology gesture for inconveniencing her earlier. Kyle isn't convinced. Honestly, neither is the audience at this point. Then Kyle takes one look at Soja's outfit. It is the same thing he wears literally every single day. Kyle declares it completely unacceptable for an outing like this. No woman wants to be escorted by a guy dressed like it's just another Tuesday. Soja, slightly wounded, asks if that's really true. Kyle confirms it without hesitation. So, true to his reputation as the head of the Empire's top information guild, Kyle throws together a last-minute makeover. He promises Soja he'll look like an entirely different person. Cut to Carolina hurrying toward the cafe. She is relieved she isn't running late. Then she spots him. Soja is standing there with his hood pulled up. He looks noticeably different from usual. They lock eyes for a beat before he finally breaks the silence. He calls her by name. She greets him with a smile, teasing that he looks different today. He brushes it off. He blames Kyle for overreacting and insists this is just routine. Carolina disagrees, though. She tells him it clearly matters more than he's letting on. He just smiles at that, quietly pleased she noticed. They head off together to explore the festival. Somewhere deep down, Carolina's heart is doing things she absolutely refuses to admit out loud. Night settles in, and the festival somehow gets even more alive. Lanterns are everywhere, and the crowds are packed shoulder to shoulder. Carolina is practically overwhelmed by just how many people showed up. With some time left before the fireworks, she turns to Soja. She asks what they should do first. He leaves it up to her, so she suggests grabbing a snack and wandering the night market a bit. That's when she spots a chicken skewer stall. Something about it hits her as strangely familiar. It is the same setup and the same smell. It even has the same little details she swears she's seen before. She brushes off the weird sense of déjà vu and orders 2 skewers. She chooses a spicy one for herself. Soja, ever the gentleman, insists on getting the same thing she's having. He does this even after she warns him it might not suit his taste. The second that the skewer touches her tongue, Carolina practically tears up. That sizzling, oily, perfectly seasoned bite hits different after a long day of work. Soja, meanwhile, is visibly struggling. Sweat is forming on his face. He is clearly regretting his life choices, but is too proud to admit the spice is destroying him. Carolina notices immediately. She digs into her bag, pulling out candy to help cool him down. He picks cotton candy flavor, grateful, while quietly suffering in silence. Just then, a street vendor starts hyping up a carnival game. He promises a massive 10,000 gold prize for anyone skilled enough to win. Carolina has lived through enough amusement park scams in her past life. She instantly clocks it as rigged. The targets are weighted, meaning they are barely able to topple even with a direct hit. It is the classic carnival trap dressed up as fair competition. She's ready to keep walking, completely unbothered. Then the vendor makes a mistake. He calls out Soja directly, taunting him about being a real man and winning something for his girlfriend. That single word, girlfriend, flips a switch. Soja turns toward Carolina and asks if there's anything she wants. He is completely serious. She tries waving it off, mentioning the game looks harder than it seems. However, the vendor doubles down. He mocks him further, practically daring him to embarrass himself in front of her. And that's when Carolina sees it. There is a subtle shift in Soja's expression. He looks calm on the surface, but is clearly irritated underneath. The vendor is completely unaware of what he just unleashed. He challenges him one more time. Soja steps forward without hesitation. Carolina doesn't even bother stopping him at this point. Nobody's stopping him now. The vendor announces that it's time to lay out the rules. Soja needs to knock down the dolls with the darts. He will score points based on accuracy. If Soja somehow manages to topple every single one, he walks away with the full 10,000 gold. The vendor adds one more catch, though. Wobbling doesn't count as a knockdown. This is just in case. Soja tries arguing his way to a win later. Soja barely reacts. He just calmly tells him not to worry because that won't be necessary. The vendor smirks to himself. He is already counting this as an easy night's profit. What Soja doesn't know, or so the vendor thinks, is that these dolls are rigged with a heavy-duty sticking spell. They are completely immovable under normal strength, no matter how hard you throw. Carolina, watching from the side, starts genuinely worrying. She isn't worried about the game itself. Instead, she worries about whether Soja's pride is about to take a hit in front of a sneaky little scam artist. Then Soja picks up the first dart. He steps forward like he's done this 1,000 times, and he throws. The doll shatters instantly. The vendor's face goes pale. The entire crowd gasps, Carolina included. Those targets were supposedly locked down by magic and completely immovable. Yet, here's Soja casually obliterating them like it's nothing. He grabs the next dart. He glances over at Carolina with this small, confident smile. Then he asks if there's a particular prize she has her eye on. Carolina is completely caught off guard. She feels her face heat up instantly. By the time the dust settles, Soja has hit every single target. He went 4 for 4, leaving the vendor standing there in stunned disbelief. Carolina can't help but tease him as they walk off afterward. She has a fluffy little rabbit doll tucked in her arms, courtesy of Soja's flawless performance. She points out how he clearly knew exactly what he was doing from the start. Meanwhile, the vendor's fury quickly turns into panic once Soja demands his rightful 10,000 gold. The poor guy practically collapses to his knees. He begs for mercy, claiming his entire livelihood depends on that stall. He even swears he'll never run the scam again. Soja is completely unfazed. He admits he saw through the whole thing from the moment he heard the absurd prize amount. He explains he only stepped in because he couldn't stand by and watch someone exploit the citizens. Looking back, though, he admits he might have gotten a little carried away. He thinks he possibly ruined the vendor's night in the process. Carolina, surprisingly, finds herself stepping in to soften the blow. She gently tells him, it's okay. He doesn't need to feel guilty about standing up for what's right. She admits to genuinely loving that one. She smiles down at the little dart prize in her hands. Right on cue, the fireworks begin lighting up the sky above them. The two just stand there together, completely absorbed in the moment. Lights are bursting overhead in every direction. Soja notices Carolina's eyes locked on the display. She is practically glowing with excitement. He gently asks if this was what she'd been looking forward to most this whole time. He even offers to find a better viewing spot, but she shakes her head. She insists the view right here is more than enough. He goes quiet for a second after that. He just watches her reaction instead of the fireworks themselves. Finally, he admits, almost to himself, that it really is beautiful. As the night winds down, the two start walking back. Carolina can't help but thank him for taking time out of his busy schedule to spend the evening with her. Soja brushes it off, though. He tells her honestly that this was the first time he's ever actually enjoyed the festival. The whole night felt genuinely special because of her, not despite his busy schedule. If anything, he says, he should be the one thanking her. Carolina glances at him as he says this. She is caught off guard by how soft his smile looks in that moment. She quietly wonders if she'll ever get to see that exact expression again. She is mid-sentence, starting to suggest doing this again sometime, when everything goes sideways. 3 men step out from a dark alley with weapons drawn. They are clearly not there for friendly conversation. One of them is grinning like he just won the lottery. He mocks the 2 of them for looking like the perfect happy couple and suggests they share the fun. Carolina is already exhausted from dealing with one scammer tonight. She is immediately done with this nonsense. Yeah, of course, this happens today too. The man demands money. Then he smirks and suggests maybe they'd rather just take Carolina instead. That comment visibly sets something off in Soja. Before either of them can react properly, Carolina feels someone grab her from behind. She barely manages to shout a warning before she's yanked backward. A blade is suddenly pressed dangerously close to her face. Soja spins around just in time to see her held hostage. She is completely at the mercy of the men surrounding them. The 3 men emerge fully from the shadows now. Their weapons are raised, and the one in the middle is still wearing that smug grin. He taunts them again about being the perfect couple. He suggests they share the fun rather than keep it to themselves. Carolina, meanwhile, is internally cataloging just how ridiculous her day has become. First a scam artist, now actual robbers. The man demands that they hand over their valuables. He mocks them as spoiled noble kids before throwing out that same disgusting suggestion again. He offers to take Carolina instead of money. Carolina clocks the situation fast. She notes their fighting stance and the way they carry themselves. They are clearly former Imperial soldiers who burned through their war pensions. They turned to robbery once the money ran out. Soja's had enough. Calmly, almost coldly, he tells them he refuses to stand there and watch something this pathetic unfold. He draws his sword in one smooth motion. The 3 men barely have time to react before he's already moving. He takes all 3 down with terrifying efficiency. He stands over them afterward. He informs them flatly that using military training to terrorize civilians is a disgrace to the Empire. He adds that they'll be answering for it. But pride comes before a fall, and Soja's moment of triumph doesn't last. One of the men is desperate and clearly out of options. He scrambles up and rushes Carolina instead, grabbing her before Soja can react. A knife is pressed against her throat. The The man warns Soja not to try anything funny while his two companions stagger back to their feet with weapons in hand. Just like that, Soja's surrounded. He is internally cursing himself for going easy on them earlier. His restraint backfired completely. Still, he tries to stay composed. He silently promises Carolina he'll get her out of this. Somehow, she catches the determination in his eyes and forces herself to stay calm too. Soja attempts to negotiate. He offers anything in exchange for her release. Before he can even finish the sentence, though, Carolina takes matters into her own hands, literally. She sinks her teeth into her captor's arm without warning. The man yelps in shock. He is completely thrown off, and honestly, so is Soja. Furious, the man raises his knife again, ready to strike. Soja closes the distance instantly, though. He slams the hilt of his sword straight into the man's skull before he can finish the motion. Carolina has her adrenaline clearly taking over, and she actually bursts out laughing. Soja scoops her safely away and finishes off the remaining two attackers. He stacks all three unconscious bodies like firewood. He turns to her immediately afterward with a voice laced with concern. He asks if she's hurt anywhere. Carolina waves it off, insisting she's completely fine. This is even as her heart continues hammering loud enough that she's almost certain he can hear it too. Once the danger's passed, Soja asks her a question. He is almost a little frustrated as he wonders why she went that far. He thinks she risked herself too much by biting the guy like that. He genuinely seems concerned she could have gotten hurt in the process. Carolina is completely confused now. She insists he's the one who told her to do it. She claims he looked her dead in the eye and silently mouthed the instruction. She even demonstrates the motion herself by mimicking the biting gesture. Soja stares at her blankly. He clearly never did that at all. Turns out it was all one big misunderstanding. He was simply trying to silently reassure her not to be scared, nothing more. The realization hits Carolina all at once. The absurdity of what she actually did is sinking in, now that the adrenaline's wearing off. She mutters something about acting completely on impulse. She chalks it up to some misplaced confidence she had simply because Soja was there. Then, almost involuntarily, she grabs onto his coat. She admits she just needs a second before her legs give out from the leftover shock. He doesn't say much. He just watches her with a quiet smile before walking her the rest of the way home. At her doorstep, Carolina thanks him for the escort. Soja seems almost apologetic that the night ended the way it did, though. He offers to make it up to her properly with dinner sometime. Carolina's caught completely off guard by the request. She barely manages to process it before agreeing. The next morning, work resumes as usual, except Carolina can't focus to save her life. Soja's words keep replaying on loop in her head. Connie notices immediately. She teases her relentlessly about clearly having a great time on her date. Carolina tries weakly denying it, insisting it was just an escort. Her face betrays her completely, though. Then Connie drops a bombshell of her own. She casually mentions she already knows about the rabbit doll prize from the festival. This is courtesy of a childhood friend connected to Soja's circle. Carolina's stunned that someone already has intel on this. News travels fast, apparently. Connie is practically vibrating with excitement. She declares this the start of something big. She jokes about wedding bouquets and matchmaking before Carolina can even get a word in. Carolina is simply too drained to argue anymore. Connie then reveals she's already taken it upon herself to dig up information on this Sir Everett Rogers character. Suddenly, Carolina's curiosity spikes through the roof, mixed with a little dread. Connie kicks things off with the biggest smile on her face. She is clearly proud of her detective work. She announces she's already gathered intel on Sir Everett Rogers. Carolina immediately tenses up. She tries to wave the whole thing off, insisting they're not even close to that kind of relationship yet. She worries what might happen if Soja somehow catches wind of Connie poking around. Connie assures her she was completely discreet about it. She casually slipped the question into a budget conversation with someone from the Imperial Knights. Apparently, that person couldn't wait to gush about him once asked. And the information itself? It is pretty impressive. Sir Rogers, it turns out, fought alongside the Emperor for 8 grueling years. He is strong enough, supposedly, to take on 20 enemies single-handedly. Carolina audibly swallows at that. She instantly connects the dots back to how effortlessly he handled those 3 armed thugs the night before. Connie continues, revealing he wasn't even born into nobility. He was originally a serf from the eastern region who earned his knighthood through sheer battlefield merit. A fief is reportedly coming his way soon, too. That is a solid resume so far. Then comes the catch. He's 30 years old. Carolina practically freezes on the spot. She plasters on a stiff smile while internally calculating the 8-year age gap between them. Connie tries softening the blow. She points out that he looks younger than his age. Furthermore, given his years buried in military service, he definitely doesn't carry any messy romantic baggage. He has no scandals, a calm demeanor, and a bright future as one of the Emperor's most trusted men. Basically, by Connie's enthusiastic standards, he is an absolute catch. She even throws in another joking reminder about getting that wedding bouquet someday. She laughs the whole thing off while Carolina mentally notes to avoid her entirely next time they cross paths. Still, 30 years old keeps replaying in Carolina's head. He is definitely older than she assumed from his appearance alone. She quickly reminds herself that marriage isn't exactly on the table yet. There is no need to spiral this early. Meanwhile, across town, Soja is sitting across from Kyle at the cafe. He is radiating an aura so gloomy that Kyle genuinely starts panicking. Kyle asks if some catastrophe has hit the Imperial Palace. He has never seen him look this troubled, not even during actual wartime. He even jokes nervously about checking their guild's overseas safe houses just in case things have gotten that dire. Soja finally admits the truth. He has agreed to meet Carolina again. Kyle's expression flips instantly from worry to pure excitement. He demands to know if this is officially a date now. Soja denies it again, insisting it's simply dinner and nothing more. Kyle isn't buying it for a second. He fires back that most people would call exactly that a date. Then his expression shifts yet again. So Soja and Carolina are just standing there staring at each other. Both are completely red in the face. Neither one is willing to break first. Eventually, Soja manages to speak up. He hesitates before getting the words out, though. He admits he didn't expect her to show up so early. Carolina greets him back, but immediately notices something different. He's not wearing his usual robe. Turns out this is the first time she's ever seen him dressed like this. Honestly, she can't help but point it out. Soja gets nervous instantly. He asks if it looks weird on him. He explains he just got tired of wearing the same thing every time they met, so he decided to switch it up. Carolina rushes to reassure him. She says it actually suits him perfectly. Then she immediately looks away, too embarrassed to keep eye contact. Soja's eyes widen at that. He can't stop the smile that spreads across his face. That's when Kyle swoops in. He takes full credit for the outfit. He basically brags that Soja has zero fashion sense, so he had to step in personally. Soja tries to wrap things up. He suggests they head to the restaurant, but Kyle isn't letting them leave that easily. He grabs Soja's shoulder. He insists they at least grab coffee first, since there's plenty of time before the reservation. Soja shoots him a look that could kill. Kyle presses on, though. He claims he just needs to deliver a new menu item and begs to serve them. Carolina ends up agreeing mostly out of politeness. This earns her Kyle's full, enthusiastic gratitude. So Kyle comes back, proudly presenting his new seasonal cream latte. He hypes it up as some perfectly balanced masterpiece. He even claims Carolina is literally the first person in the entire capital to try it. Carolina takes one look and thinks maybe this time it'll actually be decent. She takes a hopeful sip. Big mistake. She nearly dies on the spot. She pours it straight back into the cup while Soja scrambles to wipe the mess off her face. He doesn't hold back either. He flatly tells Kyle his coffee is basically poison and demands he never serve it to anyone again. Kyle actually starts crying. He insists he was confident this batch would work. Carolina suspects something's actually wrong beyond bad taste. She asks to check his storage room. Kyle defends his beans hard. He lists certificates and premium sourcing. The second he opens that sack, though, the smell alone tells Carolina everything she needs to know. That is not acidity. That's just bad. Something clicks in Carolina's head the second Kyle mentions roasted beans. She immediately realizes the math doesn't add up. Shipping from the southern continent takes about a year. This means the beans Kyle used were roasted well over a year ago. They were stale before they even reached the Empire. Kyle nervously confirms this is exactly right. He doesn't realize the disaster he just admitted to. Carolina practically loses it on the spot. Internally, she thinks if this were modern Korea, she'd be filing a lawsuit right now. She breaks it down for him. She explains that coffee beans go stale almost immediately after roasting. That is why you're supposed to import the raw green beans and roast small batches as you go. Kyle is stunned. He admits this is the first time he's ever heard that. He also reveals the same trader who scammed him on the beans was the one who recommended that so-called master barista in the first place. Yeah. Carolina clocks it instantly. This man got played completely. Still, she reassures him. Now that they know the actual problem, it's an easy fix. His coffee is about to get a whole lot better. Kyle's whole face lights up. He grabs her hand, overflowing with gratitude. He practically begs to know how he can repay her. Carolina brushes it off, but does suggest he report the scammer to the authorities. Kyle immediately vows revenge. He promises the guy will rot in prison. Meanwhile, Soja has been quietly watching this entire hand-holding moment. He clearly isn't thrilled about it. He snaps at Kyle, telling him to stop wasting time. He orders him to track the scammer down through the guild's network before he cons anyone else. Kyle scrambles off immediately, leaving the two of them alone. Soja finally finds his words again. He asks if Carolina is into coffee like Kyle is. She brushes it off. She says coffee culture just reached her academy faster than the capital. That is technically true, even if the real reason is different. She is basically from a country where coffee shops exist on every corner. The conversation drifts into how customers mostly visit for Kyle's looks, rather than the coffee itself. This makes Carolina laugh. She points out it's rough when the owner is too handsome for anyone to complain. Honestly. Soja looks visibly bothered by this. Then he drops something unexpected. He reveals that Kyle only dates older women. Carolina immediately misreads the moment. She assumes he's asking her to set Kyle up on a blind date. She starts mentally scanning her contacts while Soja turns away, blushing hard. As they finally head out, Kyle stops Soja with a serious look. He claims there's something urgent he needs to say. Soja asks what it is. He is clearly bracing himself for something serious. Kyle's whole demeanor flips instantly, though. He drops the heavy expression for a bright grin as he starts gushing about Carolina instead. He is completely amazed by how knowledgeable she is. He rambles about how he's never met anyone so wise and resourceful. He even admits he had a good feeling about her from the very start. Then he pulls out 2 tickets to an ancient artifacts exhibition. He practically shoves them into Soja's hands, insisting he take Carolina if he's planning to see her again. Sneaky move, Kyle, but honestly a solid one. Cut to the actual restaurant, and it's gorgeous. Fountains paint the whole aesthetic. Carolina is genuinely impressed. She asks how Soja even managed to snag a reservation somewhere this exclusive. He just brushes it off, though. He doesn't mention that Kyle was the one pulling strings behind the scenes. She is thrilled. She admits she's always wanted to come here and thanks him sweetly. This leaves him a little distracted. He keeps replaying Kyle's earlier words in his head. He asks about the exhibition Kyle mentioned and learns it's hosted by the Imperial Museum. It starts the following week with 3 rotating themed sessions. Turns out Kyle had already done his research too. He noted that Carolina took archaeology classes every single year during her academy days. This was despite it not being her major, yet she still managed to earn top marks. Kyle is basically convinced she'll love it. Meanwhile, Soja is stuck mentally spiraling over the simplest possible question. How does he even hand her this ticket without making it weird? Before he can figure it out, Carolina pulls him out of his head completely unprompted. She comments on how beautiful the sunlight looks hitting the lake. She mentions she used to see views like this constantly back home. This makes Soja realize he actually doesn't know much about her past. He asks where she's from and she opens up a little. She reveals her hometown, Rangeldine, is about half a day's carriage ride away. It is a small village, she describes warmly. She talks about the fresh forest air and how perfect it is for unwinding. She even mentions she's planning to visit her family during her next break. Soja's curiosity gets the better of him. He asks if she has a big family. Turns out she does. She has 2 mischievous, troublemaking twin brothers and 1 clever, sweet little sister. It's a quiet little moment, honestly. It is the kind of moment that says more about where these 2 are headed than any grand gesture could. Carolina lights up, talking about her siblings. She explains they're all attending the academy now. They are constantly bickering, but still incredibly close. Soja smiles quietly. He admits that since he has no family left, he's a little envious of what she has. Carolina immediately offers to introduce him to them sometime. She leans in slightly as she says it, which catches even her off guard. She quickly tries to walk it back. She explains she just means the scenery back home is beautiful and relaxing. If he ever wants to visit, she could introduce him to her siblings or something casual like that. Soja just smiles warmly. He tells her he'll look forward to it and hopes that day comes soon. Smooth save, Carolina. Their steaks arrive right on cue, interrupting the moment. Carolina is immediately impressed by how perfectly cut the meat looks. She tries cutting it herself, but struggles. She assumes the knife is just dull. Soja steps in, offering to help. He explains she's probably holding the knife too upright. Then, in one swift motion, he doesn't just cut the steak, he splits the entire plate clean in half. Dead silence. Soja is internally panicking because he has absolutely no idea how that just happened. Carolina bursts out laughing, though, completely diffusing the tension. Soon, they're both cracking up together. As the night winds down, they walk together. Carolina tells him she had a wonderful time. Soja admits he's relieved to hear that. He especially wanted to make up for their last awkward encounter. Then, he finally works up the courage to mention the artifacts exhibition at the Imperial Museum. He nervously holds out the ticket Kyle gave him. He is barely able to meet her eyes as he asks if she'd want to go together. Carolina's eyes widen in surprise. Then her face breaks into a smile as she happily takes it. His nervousness is practically palpable throughout that entire sentence. They reach her usual stop. She thanks him for walking her home again, promising to see him on the day of the exhibition. He echoes the sentiment. He watches her wave and disappear inside before finally letting out a breath he didn't know he was holding. But just as things seem settled, his expression shifts. There's still one matter left unresolved before he can fully move forward with Carolina. The scene cuts to the Imperial Castle, where a woman in a red gown waits. She is tied to whatever this lingering issue actually is. Now we cut to the castle, where a woman in a striking red gown and long blonde hair makes her way down the hallway. She introduces herself formally as Crown Princess Peony of Balat the moment she enters the throne room. She bows before Soja. He is seated there in full regal mode. She starts with the standard diplomatic pleasantries, but Soja isn't having any of it. He cuts her off almost immediately. He admits he's exhausted and tells her to just get to the point already. So she does. Turns out she's here to request a reduction in the massive war reparations he previously imposed. She explains that Balat's farmlands are devastated, and their finances are completely in shambles. She's basically begging for any bit of leniency that could give her kingdom a chance to recover. Soja is clearly annoyed by this. He reminds her sharply that Balat was the core force leading the allied kingdoms against the Empire for 8 straight years. He adds that they should honestly just be grateful the Empire accepted their surrender in the first place. Peony doesn't back down, though. She calmly counters that as a ruler, she can't justify squeezing reparations out of starving citizens, no matter how the war played out. That gets under Soja's skin even more. He internally fumes about how eager Balat was to invade before. Now they're suddenly refusing to pay the price. He wonders what other excuses they'll cook up next. Still, he agrees to bring it before the State Council and dismisses her. She thanks him and exits with a respectful bow. Once she's gone, Soja finally exhales. He realizes that even with the war technically over, there's still an endless pile of political headaches to deal with, but his mind drifts somewhere lighter. He thinks that at least when he's with Carolina, none of this weighs on him. He remembers she mentioned visiting her hometown. He quietly hopes she made it there safely. Meanwhile, we cut to Carolina's actual journey. She arrives by carriage late at night. She is completely sore from the long ride, but still smiles the second she steps out. She admits how good it feels to finally be home. The moment she walks in, her younger sister, Annika, comes flying into her arms. She is overjoyed. She explains she's had the day off thanks to the school's foundation day. She has been waiting since morning just for this reunion. Before Carolina can even settle in, her two brothers, Emmett and Jaden, show up at the stairs. They immediately tease that Annika probably hasn't been doing fine at all. This is because her childhood friend Nathan got placed in a different class. He seemed thrilled about escaping her and even more excited to land in the night department. The brothers cackle. They wonder aloud what Annika will do if Nathan ever gets a girlfriend, clearly enjoying every second of winding her up. Annika is not amused at all. She snaps back that her brothers are both in the magic department, so there's no way they'd actually see Nathan in the first place. She fires off a string of insults. She calls them goblin boogers and an orc, which honestly is just savage. The brothers immediately realize she's not falling for it and bolt. They run off while she chases after them, furious. Carolina just stands there, taking it all in. She thinks there's never a single quiet moment in this house. Later, things calm down a bit. One of the brothers shows off some glowing magic. This leaves Annika genuinely amazed while Carolina watches from the side, smiling at the whole scene. Her attention gets pulled back when her parents offer her another drink. She tells them she's fine, but they keep the dinner going. They are clearly enjoying having everyone together again. Her mom jokes about wanting another glass. This prompts her dad to gently suggest she ease up. Her mom only teases him back, though. She jokes about him worrying she'll get drunk and embarrass herself. It's all warm and playful watching her parents bicker like that. That's when Carolina suddenly asks what their relationship was like back when they were dating. The question catches them both off guard. She clarifies she's just curious whether they ever fought or had a healthy dynamic. Her mom admits it wasn't perfect, but mostly good. She explains that's exactly how they made it through so many hardships to build the family they have now. Then her mother clocks the real reason behind the question intensely. She asks if Carolina is seeing someone. Meanwhile, her dad immediately jumps in, demanding details. Carolina opens up a little. She explains that things aren't official yet. Still, she describes him as blunt yet sweet, quiet but thoughtful, and just genuinely fun to be around. She admits the catch, though. He's 8 years older. Despite earning a knighthood, he actually comes from a humble farming background in the East. Her parents exchange a look. Then her mother takes her hands, reassuring her that none of that matters as long as her feelings are real. She brings up how she and Carolina's father faced fierce opposition over their own status difference. This proves that real feelings can outlast those obstacles. She tells Carolina to give it a real shot and bring him home when she's sure. The next morning, Carolina heads back to the capital. She reviews the conversation in her head. She reassures herself that the age gap and status difference shouldn't matter that much. Her thoughts get interrupted the moment Soja shows up. He apologizes for being late. Carolina can't help but think he's simply too handsome to walk away from over something like background differences. He apologizes again for keeping her waiting, but she brushes it off. She says she just arrived herself. He extends his arm toward her in that effortlessly noble way of his. She happily loops her hand through it, telling him she'd love to go in together. Monday morning rolls around, and Carolina strolls into the office like everything's normal. She exchanges quick greetings with coworkers along the way. Connie spots her almost instantly, though. Her expression shifts the second she gets a proper look at Carolina's face. Something's off. Carolina looks completely spaced out. She is practically floating, like she'd drift away if someone so much as breathed on her. Connie presses immediately, asking what happened over the weekend. Carolina, true to form, tries playing it cool. She insists nothing's going on. Nobody buys it for a second, especially with half the office now quietly eavesdropping. Apparently, nothing fuels Monday morning gossip quite like Carolina's love life. Eventually, she caves. She admits she went to an exhibition with Sir Rogers, blushing the entire time she says it. Cut to a flashback of that exhibition, and it's clear within seconds why Carolina's been floating ever since. The place turns out to be massive. It is way bigger than she expected, and she's practically vibrating with excitement. She tries to figure out where to start. Soja asks what interests her most. Carolina just lights up, rattling off everything from dwarf artifacts to ancient relics without taking a breath. Soja stays quiet through most of it. He is secretly amused watching her enthusiasm completely take over. They start with this absolutely massive ancient oak ale barrel. It was supposedly a single serving for orcs back in the day. Carolina theorizes about tribal drinking culture while Soja just nods along. He is clearly out of his depth but enjoys the show regardless. From there, they look at an old calendar. It looks like complete nonsense to him. Then they see a shipwrecked music score. He privately decides it is just terrible handwriting dressed up as history. Every single exhibit gets the same reaction from Carolina, though. She shows pure, unfiltered fascination. Her eyes sparkle like a kid in a candy store. By the time they reach a ceremonial statue, Carolina's practically glowing. The object apparently rewrote a century's worth of ancient cultural understanding. She rambles about how the more you learn, the more addictive it all becomes. And Soja, let's be honest, got dragged through this entire exhibit without understanding half of it. He just quietly watches her instead. He is completely captivated by her enthusiasm rather than the artifacts themselves. By the end, Carolina's already planning future visits. She is practically begging to come back next week and the week after. She is completely lost in her own excitement until her smile suddenly falters. Soja reaches out gently. He presses his hand against her flushed cheek, explaining softly that he just wanted to help cool her down a little. Carolina goes quiet for a moment before smiling again. The gesture catches Soja slightly off guard. He runs his fingers through her hair afterward. He casually blames the heat of the exhibition hall, though it's pretty clear neither of them is fooled by that excuse anymore. Soja yanks his hand back the second the word leaves her mouth. He is suddenly very interested in looking anywhere but at her. He mutters that he wouldn't know. He blames it on her ridiculous enthusiasm instead. But the thing is, his face is just as red. Carolina doesn't let that slide for a second, calling him out with a teasing little smile. He tries to respond and gets maybe 2 words in. Then, Carolina starts fanning him with her hand instead, leaning in slightly with that same playful look. That's when Soja reaches out and catches her wrist. She apologizes for possibly startling him. She is a little flustered now herself. She tries to explain that she just thought he looked overheated too, but he doesn't let go. If anything, he pulls her in closer. He holds her hand with this quiet intensity that completely shuts down whatever she was about to say next. He says her name softly, Miss Carolina. His voice is low, and his eyes are locked on hers. And then he leans in, closer and closer. Carolina's brain short-circuits completely. Panic and something else entirely crash into each other at once. Okay, so picture this. Carolina's standing there completely frozen as Soja leans in close enough that her whole face goes red instantly. The air around them is thick with tension. She's panicking internally, hoping it doesn't happen like this. Not with this atmosphere. But instead of pulling away, she actually rises onto her toes. Her body just decided to meet him halfway. His face gets closer and closer until he kisses her hand. Just her hand. Carolina stammers, completely thrown off, but she lets it happen anyway. Then, he suddenly snaps out of whatever trance he was in. Your hand, she manages to say, and Bro immediately panics. He starts rambling about how he was just checking if she was okay. He claims her hand felt hot, so it must have been a really warm day. He refuses to even look her in the eyes the entire time. Smooth recovery. Soja. He drags her off to grab a cold drink, practically fleeing the moment. Carolina just stands there watching him walk away with the biggest smile creeping onto her face. She notes to herself that he's really not honest with his feelings. She is clearly delighted, especially when she notices he's blushing just as hard as she is. So they end up sitting under an umbrella with strawberry shakes. Carolina is still trying to calm her racing heart. She steers the conversation toward the ancient artifact exhibition, thanking him for showing up as a guest. Soja is quietly relieved she's not bringing up what almost happened earlier. Then she starts worrying about his schedule. She wonders if she's stealing his precious weekend time as the king's aide. He brushes it off, though. He jokes that paperwork was never his strong suit anyway. Carolina pushes back, however, genuinely concerned. She offers to postpone everything so he can rest. That's when Soja finally drops his guard completely. He admits that even if it meant struggling through exhaustion, he wanted to come see her. He specifically calls it an attempt to earn some points. Then he asks her not to push him away. Carolina turns completely red. Stunned, she wonders if he really just said that. Back in the present, Connie yanks Carolina out of her daydream. She insists she needs to get fitted for her wedding dress immediately. Carolina sighs, unsurprised by the reaction. When Connie points out that holding hands before dating is pretty normal these days, Carolina actually considers it. Connie presses harder, point blank. She asks if she has real feelings for Sarujas. Carolina hesitates, then finally admits it. She likes him too. Connie leans in for the story, asking how he became so sure. Carolina takes them back to day 2 of the exhibition. That was where Soja had gotten weirdly fascinated by an ancient dwarven bellows. He casually asked if it meant he was into smelting tools too. After all, nothing says romance like a guy nerding out over old blacksmith equipment. The exhibition is clearly Carolina's kind of place. She's genuinely enjoying herself. Her eyes light up over ancient artifacts. Edwin is right there beside her too. That would be sweet if he wasn't reciting every single detail like he's reading directly off a wall plaque though. Because that's exactly what he's doing. He launches into a full breakdown of a dwarf artifact. He explains its durability, the ancient furnaces, and the ultra-high temperatures. He even gets into the legend of mithril being a real mineral and not just folklore. Carolina listens and nods. She is genuinely surprised by how much he knows until it clicks. She glances at him sideways. She realizes this man memorized the entire exhibition catalog word for word. She almost loses it right there. She plays along though. She asks about a nearby mithril shield just to see if he keeps going. Of course he does. He launches into King Carlin's history without missing a beat. By the time the sun starts setting, they're walking down the street together. Carolina finally calls him out on it. She tells him he really didn't have to memorize the whole thing for next time. Edwin stiffens. He tries to brush it off with a smile. Then he just admits it quietly. He spent all of yesterday going through it because he wanted to be able to talk with her about the things she actually loves. He scratches the back of his neck like he's embarrassed, saying it out loud. Carolina goes silent. She catches herself thinking that for a 30-year-old man, he is way too cute. Honestly, nobody can blame her for that one. Connie is with her later. She is already smiling at the whole situation. She squeezes her shoulder and tells her they look genuinely good together. Carolina agrees, but the real problem is next week. It is the final exhibition, and she has no idea how to naturally set up whatever comes after. Connie jumps in, ready to offer advice, then pauses. She realizes she's never actually had a boyfriend either. Yeah, same, Carolina admits. So they do the only logical thing. They decide to head to a bookstore together to research how dating actually works. They are two women fully winging it and treating romance like a research project. The situation is both chaotic and completely endearing at the same time. The library scene is exactly what you'd expect from two women who have absolutely no dating experience but an enormous amount of determination. Carolina closes her book, looking satisfied. Connie, bless her, has already finished her own copy of a guide literally titled The Secret Guide to Winning the Heart of the Nobleman You Fancy. They compare notes like they're studying for an exam. Smile during eye contact, drop subtle compliments, and the big one, soft physical touch. Both of them land on that last point at the same time. They are completely in sync, grinning at each other as they've just cracked some kind of code. Connie sends Carolina off with full confidence and a rallying speech. Carolina walks out of that library looking like a woman with a plan. Cut to the exhibition building on its final day, and the crowd is genuinely overwhelming. Carolina is scanning the sea of people, wondering if she'll even find Edwin when she spots him. Deep breath. Tactic 1. She flashes a smile straight at him while holding eye contact. Edwin's eyes widen, and he immediately turns his face away at full speed. Failure. Carolina doesn't even flinch. She pivots straight to Tactic 2 and tells him he looks particularly handsome today. Edwin stiffens up. He spots a conveniently long queue nearby and announces they'd better hurry before all the good spots are taken. He's gone before she can say another word. Another failure. Carolina is internally questioning whether that bestseller book actually works on real human beings. The crowd only gets worse inside. Just when things seem impossible, a man bumps into Carolina. She falls straight into Edwin, who catches her without a second thought. She steadies herself and realizes her hands are pressed against his chest. The silence that follows is loaded. But Carolina, being Carolina, recovers fast. She reminds him that he was the one who said they shouldn't wander too far apart. Then, she smoothly suggests they just hold hands to stay together. Edwin turns red immediately, but nods and links arms with her anyway. I genuinely did not see that coming from her. She turned a stumble into a victory and did not even blink. They make their way through the final stretch of the exhibition. Edwin is noticeably quieter than usual, though. Carolina points it out. He admits he only read the catalog this time instead of memorizing it. He even confesses he has no real passion for ancient history. But then he says something that completely shifts the tone. Watching her eyes light up at every display, seeing what genuine wonder looks like on someone's face, that made it worthwhile for him. Carolina goes quiet. He's smiling softly, and she's looking at him with something she can't quite name yet. Then she takes a breath and tells him there's something she'd like to propose. Carolina's proposal is simple, but it hits differently. She points out that every outing so far has been built around what she enjoys. This includes the festival, the restaurant, and this very exhibition. So next time, she wants to go somewhere that makes his eyes sparkle instead. She wants to do the same for the time after that and the time after that. She says it with a smile like it's the most natural thing in the world. Edwin just stands there, completely disarmed. Of course, he smiles. What else is he supposed to do with that? Back in his office later, Edwin is sitting at his desk. He is staring at paperwork he clearly hasn't touched in a while. Carolina's words keep replaying in his head. Every time they do, a fresh wave of red crawls up his face. He can't settle down. He's never felt anything quite like this before. The closest description he can come up with is that fate is tickling him from somewhere under his shirt, which is honestly the most painfully accurate way to describe a crush anyone has ever said. Kyle walks in to deliver a report and immediately clocks that something is very wrong with his emperor. One look at that lovesick expression and Kyle already knows exactly what this is about. He makes a silent personal decision to cut the conversation short. He wants to escape before he ends up hearing about Carolina for the next 3 hours. So Kyle drops the one thing guaranteed to shift the mood. The Crown Princess of Velos has formally expressed interest in a state marriage again. That snaps Edwin back to reality fast. He thinks through the politics of it calmly. Aligning with Velos isn't a bad move for the Empire at all. The problem is that the candidate they're putting forward is the third prince. He is too young and too low in the line of succession to be a viable match. Edwin dismisses him immediately. Kyle then quietly suggests the Crown Princess herself might be willing. Edwin goes silent. He tells Kyle to give him time to think and dismisses him without another word. Meanwhile, Carolina and Connie are already talking about it. Connie is almost excited about the whole thing. An emperor and a crown princess sound like enemies to lovers. To her, it is the romance of the century. But Carolina's mind is somewhere else entirely, and it is not a happy place. She knows the original story. She knows the female lead hasn't even entered the picture yet. If a state marriage happens before that meeting ever occurs, Edwin might never have the turning point that changes him. Which means the tyrant stays a tyrant, which means the empire bleeds. Carolina is on her feet before Connie even finishes her sentence. The state marriage simply cannot happen. Carolina is not about to sit back and let a state marriage derail everything. The original female lead hasn't even shown up yet. The last thing anyone needs is for that ticking time bomb of an emperor to never get his redemption arc. She's already mentally bracing herself. Meanwhile, Edwin is sipping tea at what is very obviously a dessert spot popular with young women. He is barely touching his plate. He watches Carolina absolutely demolish a strawberry, like it personally offended her though. He's smiling the whole time, genuinely content just watching her enjoy herself. Carolina notices his untouched dessert and immediately calls him out. Today was supposed to be about what he likes. He quietly admits he picked this place because he heard it was popular and thought she'd enjoy it. Carolina tells him that's sweet, but it defeats the whole purpose if he's not having fun too. Then Edwin looks her straight in the face. He says that watching her enjoy herself is what brings him joy. He said it with that face too. Carolina clearly doesn't know what to do with herself either, because she completely zones out. She stares at him until he asks what she's thinking about. She snaps back and pivots fast, asking about his week instead. And this is where it gets interesting. Edwin keeps deflecting. Nothing much happened, he claims. He asks how her week was, but she gives nothing much back either. They go back and forth until Carolina finally puts her foot down and calls him out directly. She points out that every time she asks, he shuts it down immediately and never offers anything real. She asks him plainly if he finds talking to her boring. That hits. Edwin immediately denies it. After a long pause, he finally gives her something real. The second round of negotiations with Velos fell through. He says it quietly like it's been sitting heavy on him all week. Carolina blinks. That is very much classified imperial information. But Edwin waves it off, saying everyone in the inner palace already knows anyway. She files that away nervously. She decides to push a little further while she has the opening. She brings up the marriage rumor directly. She asks if it's true and whether the emperor might actually have feelings for the crown princess of Velos. Edwin nearly chokes on his tea. Carolina brings it up as casually as she can manage, but inside she is anything but calm. She asks Edwin whether the rumors are true. She wants to know if the emperor might actually have feelings for the crown princess of Velos. The whole time, she's quietly begging the universe for a no. If that marriage goes through before the original female lead even enters the picture, the emperor never gets his turning point. The imperial palace would stay exactly as dangerous as it's always been. Her entire peaceful work life hangs in the balance, and she is not willing to lose it. Edwin looks like he just swallowed something unpleasant. He wants to know who is even spreading that story. He explains that while marriage discussions are happening, they have nothing to do with the emperor personally. The plan is just to select a suitable consort candidate. The emperor himself has zero interest in the crown princess. He is almost aggressively clear about it. Carolina notices how worked up he's getting over something that supposedly has nothing to do with him, though. She doesn't push it, however. She's just relieved. The timeline is safe for now, and that's enough reason to order more cake. The mood stays light until the conversation drifts toward the reparation situation with Velos. Edwin slips up, calling the crown princess a nuisance mid-sentence. Carolina shuts that down immediately. She reminds him that even enemy royalty deserves proper respect in public. He corrects himself without argument. She smiles to herself, thinking his years as a knight are really showing through. Then Carolina actually engages with the problem itself. Velos is completely broke. Pushing through the full reparations amount would devastate their population. Letting it slide entirely makes the empire look soft, though. It's a genuine deadlock. Edwin offhandedly mentions that the only thing Velos has left worth anything is probably the royal crown itself. Carolina's eyes light up instantly. Her suggestion stops Edwin cold. Take the crown. She suggests doing it not as a replacement for the reparations, but as a symbolic act of dominance. The empire demonstrates its power and authority without financially destroying a nation. They still need to maintain face with them, after all. They can hold the crown and return it later under the right circumstances. The empire looks both powerful and generous at the same time. Edwin goes quiet for a long moment and then agrees. It's a good idea, and he knows it. Carolina lays it out cleanly. Take honor instead of money. By accepting the crown as a symbolic gesture rather than demanding financial reparations, the empire projects overwhelming strength. They show gracious generosity at the same time. Nobody gets to call them weak, and nobody gets to call them cruel. Edwin sits with that for a moment and then quietly agrees. It's a good idea. It also quietly humiliates every Velos politician who has been stalling and doing absolutely nothing useful while their country suffers. He's sold. Kyle gets the full briefing shortly after. His first reaction is genuine surprise. The strategy is too measured, too diplomatic, and too unlike everything Edwin usually does. He admits he was half expecting to hear that the emperor had just decided to raid Velos' warehouses and take whatever was left. Edwin gives him a very unimpressed look. Then he tells Kyle the idea wasn't actually his. It came from Carolina. And Kyle just stops. This is apparently not the first time either. Kyle starts listing her accomplishments like she's reading from a file he already has memorized. He brings up the Duke of Cumberland's situation and her reputation in the Ministry of Finance. He notes she was top of her class in the employment exam. Edwin cuts in before he can finish to add that she also graduated first from the Academy's Department of Administration. They are both clearly competing to see who knows more impressive Carolina facts, and it is a little funny to watch. Kyle concludes that she is genuinely wasted in a dead-end ministry position. Then he immediately pivots to complaining. He wishes the Intelligence Guild had even one person half as capable because his workload is slowly killing him. Edwin suggests recruiting more people. Kyle reminds him that it's not as simple as it sounds, since ability alone isn't enough. Background checks matter just as much, and finding someone who clears both bars is nearly impossible. He's mid-complaint when he suddenly goes very quiet. Something just clicked. He asks Edwin to confirm a standing offer he once made about scouting exceptional candidates with top-tier compensation. Edwin confirms it without hesitation, and Kyle smiles. Yeah, that smile means exactly what we think it means. Meanwhile, Carolina is outside enjoying the view when a small boy approaches with a letter. It is internal Imperial Palace mail. She's never received one of those before, and she already has a sinking feeling before she even breaks the seal. She pulls it open and her eyes go wide. It's from Kyle. Wow, this is just getting good. Want us to continue? Comment Kyle below. Until next time, ciao.